It is Wednesday, May the 6th. We are on our 35th devotion. How much is Jesus worth to you? In my Bible reading this morning, I read in Matthew 26, when Jesus was in the home of Simon the leper, and a woman came to Jesus and anointed him with a jar of very expensive perfume. The disciples were indignant that this woman would do this. Why? Because the perfume that she just poured on Jesus was worth a lot of money. Jesus then went on to rebuke his disciples because they did not see the value of what this woman was doing. This woman regarded Jesus as extremely more valuable than her measly jar of perfume worth a year's wages. What's a year's wages compared to the greatness of Jesus, the Messiah, the Son of the living God? Well, then just a night or two later, the disciples were together with Jesus as he prayed in the Garden of Gethsemane. They were too tired to stay up with Jesus and pray. They did not realize what was about to happen, that Jesus was going to be betrayed, taken prisoner, beaten, mocked, and crucified. While they were in the garden that night, a large mob came to arrest Jesus, a mob led by Judas Iscariot. The disciples, they were terrified. One of them grabbed a sword and cut off one of the ears of one of the Roman soldiers. But Jesus rebuked his disciple and told him to put away his sword. Well, the disciples probably wondered, then what in the world are they supposed to do? If Jesus didn't want them to fight, what was their other option? Be arrested with Jesus and possibly face death? Well, on that day, the disciples did not have it in them to give their all to Jesus. They were not willing to die with Jesus that day. At that moment, they saw their lives as more valuable than their surrender to Jesus. We know that eventually, when the Holy Spirit came upon the disciples, that they would understand the immeasurable value of Jesus, and they would eventually come to the full realization that Jesus is more valuable than absolutely anything, including their very lives. But in those days before the crucifixion, the disciples did not grasp that Jesus was more valuable than perfume worth a year's wages, and they did not see Jesus as valuable enough to risk and sacrifice their lives for. Now, my point is not to be hard on the disciples here, because when the Holy Spirit filled their lives, they gave everything up to spread the gospel of Jesus Christ to the world. But my point is to raise a question for you and me personally. How much is Jesus worth to you and me? Let me ask you the question personally, more specifically, how much is Jesus worth to you? Did not Jesus say in Luke 14:33, "Those of you who do not give up everything you have cannot be my disciples"? Meditate on that. Are you truly willing to give up absolutely everything in your life to follow Jesus? Is he worth that to you? Do you see Jesus as that precious? Do you see him as worth more than anything else in your life? Do you see Jesus as more valuable than the comforts and the ease and pleasures of this life? It is the Lord's desire to rid us of our idols, those things that we are placing above him. If we truly belong to Jesus, he will not allow us to have things in our lives that we see as dearer than him. Why? Because he knows that there is nothing more valuable than he is. There's nothing more precious. Jesus Christ is 1,000,000,000 times more precious than we realize. In Jesus is joy greater than all the joy that we have ever experienced combined. In Jesus is a treasure worth more than all the treasure of the world. Do you believe it? How much is Jesus worth to you? If there is anything in your life right now that is getting in the way of your valuing Jesus above every other thing? Are you willing that He alter your life so that you know the value of Him who is the precious Son of God? If you truly are a child of God who belongs to Jesus Christ, then know this: the Holy Spirit of God lives in you. And if there is anything in your life that you are placing before the Lord, the Holy Spirit will bring conviction to you, because it is His desire to cleanse and to purify you. So in closing, I'm going to read to you something that I read this morning from A.W. Tozer. And as you listen to this, I want you to carefully reflect upon these powerful truths. This is what he writes. The Holy Spirit is faithfully exposing your spiritual condition. Your responsibility is to listen to the Holy Spirit, follow through on His action, and take a solemn vow to break the lethargy at all cost. Remember what Solomon said along this line in Ecclesiastes 5:4. When thou vowest a vow unto God, defer not to pay it, for He hath no pleasure in fools. Pay that which thou hast vowed. Lady Julian of Norwich understood this about as well as anybody I have read. She wrote, "O God, please give me 3 wounds, the wound of contrition, and the wound of compassion, and the wound of longing after God." And then she added this postscript, which I think is one of the most beautiful things I have ever read. This is what she said. "This I ask without condition. Father, do what I ask, and then send me the bill. Anything that it costs will be all right with me." We of the evangelical persuasion, we want God to do all the work, and we get an easy ride to glory. Certainly, Christ has paid the full price for our redemption, but our walk with God on a daily basis will cost us much. Are we willing cheerfully to pay the cost?